Hello and welcome to another episode of Page Burners. We are working our way through Deadhouse Gates, the second book of the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. We are working our way through all of the Malazan books. We haven't got to an Esselmon book yet because we're reading them in publication order, but we will get there eventually. Today's discussion is going to be for chapters 11 and 12, the first two of the sub-book entitled Chain of Dogs. My name is Varsha. I run the YouTube channel Reading by the Rainy Mountain. We meet every week for these Malazan discussions. If you'd like to chat with us about these books or about any of the books that we have infinite reading groups for, please consider checking out the pagechewing forum. I think that's everything. Yeah, with me, I have the usual group of friends. They'll go around introducing themselves, talking about what they're most excited to discuss this week from the chapters we read. And I believe, Steve, you also have a commenter note to read to us.
Yeah, so just very quickly, I'm Steve from Steve Talks Books and the Pagechewing podcast, and also pagechewing.com. We have a blog there that I'm posting horribly written reviews. We're looking for more reviewers, by the way, too, so anyone's interested, get in touch with me. So a couple of things. We did a comment from DL Asis. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing the name, but you did mention her in regards to Fellison. Her body is her only remaining currency from our conversation last week, which makes a lot of sense. Also, wanted to mention, last week we were just kidding. Everyone calm down about hairlock. We were just playing around. We have our own lore going on now. We're just wishful thinking about hairlock. That was him, though, just for the record. It's been confirmed.
I'm not joking.
It was hairlock.
I'm rewriting my reality.
Could be.
We went back and forth on the forum. It was a good time. But no, this week I kind of struggled through chapter 10, and there's a lot of characters and a lot of things going on, a lot of people who aren't being transparent with what they're doing and what their intentions are. It's hard to keep up with. And chapter 12 was a little bit of a slog for me, but looking forward to getting some other thoughts on that. But I'll pass it on to Dan.
I am Dan, and I don't know what to say about
Don't
me.
want to promote your channel, Dan.
No. Not yet. Next time. So I'll just skip that. I actually did not think about what I wanted to talk about because I finished reading the book 5 minutes ago. The chapter 5 minutes ago.
Okay.
I was in a rush.
Okay, me too. On my way home, I finished the chapter.
While driving? I don't know if that's recommended.
I wasn't right. Okay, yeah, sure. I feel like I can tell you things and you won't believe me. So yes, I read the book while I was. My husband was driving. Everybody calm down.
Okay.
The clock changed, so there was daylight on my way back home.
Nice. I'll pass it to Shannon anyways. I'm done.
Yes.
I'm Shannon, and I think I'm most excited to talk about the maybe the 13,000 kids that Shadow Throne and Apt adopted this week. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Air quotes adopted.
And I'll pass it on to Carl.
And I am Carl, and oh man, there's some interesting stuff. I mean, I'm with you, Steve, that I felt like it was a little more difficult to get through these couple chapters than some of the other ones, although I still enjoyed it. I think Fellison, Haboric, and Culp's adventure through the city of stone people really stood out to me because I straight up did not remember that. Like as I was reading, I had like very vague memories, particularly of like Fellison climbing and then like failing to climb and like tearing her ankle up. But I don't know how, but I just did not remember the stone people at all, which is crazy because it's like wild. Like it's a crazy sequence. But somehow it hadn't been petrified in my memory.
Yeah, it's interesting. I vaguely remembered that section that they find water underground somewhere. But yeah, it was nice to see it. And like Heboric's little monologues there about what's going on and what the truth is. That was interesting for sure. Oh, I have to do mine. First of all, Steve, thank you for bringing up the hairlock thing, telling everyone that's the way the cookie crumbles, and that's that hairlock lives. Secondly, the thing that I want to talk about the most is what the scene preceding the dragon, the arrival of the dragon. How are you guys calling these chapters boring? There was an undead dragon.
Well, yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, that was really cool. For me, it wasn't like I didn't find it boring. I just found it not as easy of a, or not as much of an immediate page turner. Maybe it's because I was kind of from the come down of the previous chapters and how intense those were. But I also enjoyed that it wasn't quite as well. It was still bleak, talking about children
Yeah.
dying. So
Yeah, we met the
children
line,
getting
the famous
crucified.
line about
Yeah.
children dying.
The famous line? Which famous line?
Children are dying, and the thing that, what is it, Bolt? No, Lull. Lull tells Duiker. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I haven't
Children are
highlighted some.
dying. Like you could summarize human history in those 3 words.
Yeah, all the
Okay.
injustices.
He's, when he's basically like, forget all the historians and scholars and what have you. You can really just summarize how horrible history is with children are dying.
Hmm.
And how we never learn our lessons because children continue to die.
Yeah. I mean, you can summarize also as children are being born over time, which is true also. Makes it less bleak, but just as true.
So the line is about the injustices in the world can be summarized as
There you go.
children are dying.
I see. Fair enough.
And Lal says, "There, I've done your job for you. You can wash your hands off of this. Go do something else." Anyway, I think we start these chapters with Culp and Co. Like Culp basically trying to find a way out of the warden. I can't say I fully understood what it was he did. He seems to be taking credit / blame for the appearance of this dragon. And I don't know what he did. It seems like he bent reality a little bit, kind of like sort of, it felt a bit like bending space-time, so to speak, and invited this dragon that then tugged them out into another warren. And from there, they ended up in their own world. But I don't think I fully understood what Culp did, or
Me neither.
whether we are meant to understand, or if he even understood what he did.
No, I mean, I think you're right that it is meant to be a little bit like ambiguous, confusing. I mean, Culp certainly doesn't understand. I don't think he summoned the dragon though. The dragon came separately, and the dragon helped him actually rip a tear in reality. I mean, my understanding in terms of what he was attempting, because they were like, we're screwed if we just get stuck here. And so he's like, well, I create, illusions. And so and illusions are all about fooling people, making them believe reality is something that it isn't. So what if I trick reality itself and make it believe that there is a rip in the warren here? And so he tried to do that, but he was not strong enough. And then the dragon started helping, I think. And then on top of that, some mysterious ascendant came in and used him to tear open the portal properly.
I thought the Ascendant helping close it or something.
Or
That's what I thought.
I may be getting the events backwards.
I thought there was something like a tear, then water was coming through, and then he was like, shit, I need to close this. But I don't know how the tear got formed and why it was coming water out of it.
Closing it? Or I thought
that's what I thought.
Escape.
I'm very confused as to what happened in that whole sequence, I guess, until they get out of it.
So I missed the part where he was trying to pretend that there is a rip in the warren. That makes sense now, and I don't know if that's what brought the dragon there. But once they crossed it, so before that they were talking about how they can only go from water to water, air to air, right?
Yeah.
Like within the warren, they can only go like follow the elements. So they seem to have landed themselves in some sort of ocean, and then they started flooding whatever place they were in already, and it was really bad. But I don't know where the flood was coming from, because the sea that they were in wasn't very deep.
Yeah, I thought it was like it's coming from a different Warren or from their own reality or something like that. I don't know. That's what I thought.
Okay,
But
they,
I don't understand. Yeah,
he definitely ripped open a Terran reality to
yeah.
get back to the human world. That definitely is a thing. That's the first thing he did. And then
But where did the dragon come from?
and you know what? The dragon helped him and basically made it, I mean, it's left ambiguous what Warren they open a portal to, but then we get the fire that washes over them, right? But that doesn't kill them. And it washes over Bowden and makes him like all bronze and
Yeah.
uh
But
Gessler
that's after,
and
right?
what's that?
That's after this whole thing, right? There's a whole thing with the water first, and then when he's done closing or opening or whatever, then they somehow, I don't know, are they on top of the dragon? Are they dragged by the dragon? I wasn't sure what was happening. But then they go to the fire world or something. I don't know.
They're in the wake of the dragon, as in the dragon is like flies over them and they're moving behind it in like its winds, kind of, because you know they're on a ship.
So they're flying?
Float around. No. The sails are being blown by
Okay.
the wake of the dragon,
I see.
and there may be a sorceress aspect to it because it kind of keeps happening.
I
But
see.
like they were part of the problem was they were just like stuck floating on this ocean, and they needed to get, you know, otherwise they're going to starve. They need to go back, and so then the dragon shows up, and as Culp is trying to figure out what to do, and the dragon actually helps him open up, like it basically possesses him. We do find out it's soul taken, so it is not just like a, you know, it's some person who transforms into a dragon, and yeah, other ascendants invaded him.
Yeah. I guess our old dragons soul taken. Every dragon we've seen up until now was soul taken.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. There is
The
one we
red
met in
one.
Gardens of the
Yeah.
Moon who is not a soul taken. The red
Is it
dragon.
not?
The red dragon that is on Moonspawn. It's not. We don't really go into it much, but I promise you that that dragon is not soul taken. Is just like a dragon.
Okay.
They do
I
exist.
thought- okay.
Separate, just like dragons, like flat dragons do exist in this universe.
Flat dragons. Okay.
Yeah.
Not three-dimensional ones.
Exactly. Ones that
Okay.
like paper. Okay.
Yes.
That's how they go through everything. You know, it's how they slip through reality. It's their whole
That would
deal.
be cool.
Hairlock,
Paper dragon.
when he's reborn for a third time, is going to be one of those dragons.
He never really
Hairlock
dies.
wasn't reborn, he
No.
was just alive. Wait, no.
No,
No,
he died.
It wasn't
No,
it wasn't a
he definitely
second time.
died.
It was a
He
second
definitely
rebirth.
died in Gardens of the Moon.
Yeah, no. No, I mean,
Did he die? I thought
Yeah.
he was. Oh
He
yeah,
was
yeah, he
about
died. Yeah.
I'm sorry, forget the rest of the Book of the Fallen. This is now the Hairlock podcast. So tune in every week to hear our thoughts about how Hairlock is going to appear next and how he'll get out of his
Yes.
latest scrape.
yes.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah, looking at the one of the wikis, Culp mentally accesses the Meanius Warren in an attempt to find a way out of the Curade something Warren, but is unsuccessful. Soon after, a very large undead soul-taken dragon flies between the Sinlada and the Rent. Sensing that Culp was trying to steal the Rent, the dragon physically takes hold of Culp, making him hover above the deck and casting him in a blue flame. Other ascendants take notice and also inhabit Culp. This action seals the Rent and Culp is freed. The dragon flies off, and the Silonata is steered to ride in its wake. The dragon then opens a warren that is engulfed in fire. Bowden picks up Felison and jumps overboard as the inhabitants burn on the Sinalda.
Okay. But it still doesn't explain who made the Rent, I guess. Okay.
Yeah, Kalb and the dragon together somehow
The
made
second
the
Rent.
Rent.
I guess,
Hmm?
yeah, there was the first Rent that
Yeah.
was someone else.
So
Okay.
wait, what? So there was one Rent that was opened and closed. Kalp maybe had something to do with it because he kept saying, "What did I do? What did I do?"
Yeah.
And then he was trying to close it. The dragon realizes that he's trying to close it and then helps him. And then some random ascendants notice something happening and they decide to participate. So now the dragon's like, you have helped, I'll back off. And so all the ascendants together, and Culp, I guess, I don't know if Culp backs off at this point, but they close the rent together. At this point, they are somewhere with water. But from here on, the dragon's still on their side of the rent, and they follow the dragon and they get charred, or they feel like they're getting charred. And then they end up in our world. It is possible that they are now in a warren that has access to other places. Like you can travel through the warrens to get to our place, except that warren was apparently completely closed, so they couldn't find a way out. So maybe they got themselves into a warren and they just traveled through the warrens to get to our world. And it might have just been one warren where they got nearly burnt to a crisp, and then they came out.
But they jumped off a ship in the fire warren, so I don't know how they got from there to our world.
That's true. While they were still getting burnt. But it's possible they had come out of it, but they were still feeling the sensation of being burnt because it was really hot. And then they jumped. I don't know.
But then the ship should be there too, then. Right?
The ship?
If they were already in the real world when they jumped, the ship should also be there.
Yes.
But it's not.
What I will say...
isn't it? Oh.
Is it?
I thought it was. No, maybe not. Sorry, go ahead, Carl.
Without explicitly naming it, we have learned the name of the warren they traveled through to get back to like the human world.
The Warren of Fire. No.
I'm not going to comment on it. I'm just saying that it is one. It's one you could theoretically theorize about.
Maybe it's hell. It's burning.
It's hell.
We also learned that the dragon is a Tilanima's Bonecaster soul taken.
Yes.
Just gonna throw that out.
It's crazy. Yeah, that like series of fantasy words, like if some random person heard us saying that, like they either think you're like speaking a different language, or they think you're like on crack. Like it's crazy the things we say for this series. Or both.
I'm listening to A Scanner Darkly, and the guy just randomly starts spouting German. And I go, what is going on? Are there accidentally parts of another book in this audiobook? But no. Anyway, Bowden in all of this throws himself, much like Heberic did earlier, he throws himself on Felicin to protect her. And we later find out, is now a good time to talk about it, that he was sent by Tavor to protect Felicin. And Felicin kicks him out and says, thank you, I don't need you. And he's like, yeah, cool, bye. I'm out.
Additional context for that, right, is he's a Talon, which were like the CIA to the Claw's FBI for our Americans out there. They handled intelligence, assassinations, things like that outside of the Empire, while the Claw was supposed to be within the Empire. And then the Claw kind of did everything after Lysine took over, because she was not in charge of the Talons, and so wanted to get rid of them because they were loyal to the old Emperor, or that's the idea. Which is cool, learning, right, about the history of the Empire. I definitely always enjoy that.
Yeah, I've forgotten about
that. So this is the thing that you...
a little bit to
Go ahead,
Tavor's character, because how did she hunt up this outlawed person? Like, I don't know. We have no way of knowing, I don't think, but it's interesting that she's apparently got connections to a more illicit side of the Empire.
It made Felicin's story even more tragic in some ways, because what her actions were making it harder for him to get her out. So she was trying to survive, but in trying to do that, she made it harder for him to get her out. It's pretty sad.
But I think he could have just told her, like all the way from the beginning. He just said, "I'm here. I'm gonna get you out. Just chill. We're gonna work together to get out." Right?
Yeah, I wondered about that. Why didn't he tell her at any point where he saw her sinking deeper and deeper? Like they made snide comments right now about how you can't get someone out who doesn't want to leave, but they feel like they had a lot of opportunity to
Two
let
thoughts.
her know otherwise.
One, I imagine he was concerned that she might reject his help, coming from the sister that effectively sold her into slavery. So, Tavor was working with a difficult hand, certainly, and made some difficult decisions. And I think you can very easily debate whether or not they were the right ones. But she was trying to protect her sister, but that doesn't excuse that she, at the very least stood by while her sister was sold into slavery. And so Bowden, I imagine was concerned that she would reject him as she did. And then the other part is if she rejects him or if she talks about him being a Talon, word gets around, people are going to try to kill him, try to take him out, right? He's wanted, not just as a slave, not just a slave on the run, but because he's one of the preeminent persona non grata in the Empire right now.
And it makes their intimate interactions even more puzzling and
I hadn't
gross.
even thought about that. That is crazy.
Because you figure he'd have a little bit more restraint.
Yeah, and see, I remembered this thing about Bowden last time when we were reading that section, and I was like, yeah, that makes it worse. That he was supposed to be protecting her, and whatever judgment he decided that he wanted to pass on her by doing whatever testing he wanted to put her through, it seemed like a really strange way. But I think someone, maybe it was Shannon, brought up that he wanted to give her the chance to kill him because he knows that she took the knife out and basically take it back or something. But even that, I don't know. For a man of his skills, I feel like there'd be other ways to get the thing back.
He's probably just an asshole. That's probably I think.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I don't sure he's been sent out to protect Felicin and he did do, I guess, the best he could, but I don't know if he entirely always acted with her best interest at heart.
What I wonder is he getting paid to do that, or is there some sort of other reason why he's doing it? Is he still part of some sort of organization? The way he tells it, I guess no, they're all on their own. But maybe he's still somewhat feeling like, oh, this is some work for vampire or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess like Shannon said, the more interesting question might be how she was able to get someone like him and to get him to do this. Even so, what is his motivation? Yeah, that makes sense. Money seems boring, but what else could it be? I was gonna say, yeah. So during this, when they were escaping that warren, the dragon and the ascendants were both helping Culp, Culp close the rent in the warren, right? And Culp thinks to himself that the dragon was indifferent. Like these people mean nothing to him. Like they just happened to be they just happened to be along the way that the dragon was doing something. Um, but the ascendants, he feels their malice, right? And then we get Felicin's perspective, where she's also experiencing both things, the dragon's indifference and the ascendant's malice. And before I go there, Culp prefers the indifference to the malice because he doesn't want to be actively hurt, I guess, by the ascendants. But Felicin prefers the malice to the indifference. Like she doesn't even detect it as malice. Like they are paying attention to her, and I think she prefers that to the dragon's indifference, that we are just fleas on its back, which I think is a very interesting insight into her character, like why she's still so keen on Bennett and so hateful of Bowden, because I think Bowden's behavior towards her can in large part be translated as indifference, right? She probably would interpret his attention to her, or lack of it as indifference. But Bennett, whatever negative attention he gave her, it was still attention. And I think she preferred that. I think that was a very interesting thought she had that explained a lot about her character, especially when we saw how someone else would think about the situation and how she's processing it.
Yeah, that is an interesting note.
I did not think about it, but makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah. And there were a few other things that were really interesting about this scene. There was, yeah, I guess this whole thought process that Culp engages in before opening the warren, like what's real versus what isn't, is the synergy within a mortal's mind. Can reality itself be fooled into asserting an unreality? Like, sure, this is in preparation to doing the magic, but I feel like that could be applied to some of our characters who are blinding themselves to reality in some ways, or are forced to blind themselves to reality, like Icarium and Felicin. And basically, what's inside their mind is what's true for them. So we talked before about like overarching themes across the book and maybe across the series. This felt like one of those to me that can, like, a connecting point between our characters and situations. And I like that in some cases the connection happens, like at least one of the connections seems to be through a means of magic, like the path of hands, for instance, the human animal equivalence that you drew, Carl. The path of hands is like actual magic, and same with this one with Carl basically bending reality to his mind. I thought that was interesting. And then there was another about the power of words. I think there was a conversation in the previous chapters between Fiddler and was it Mapo, when they were talking about the power of words. And Mapo tells Fiddler that, it can bring down empires. And there's something here about that too. He'd hoped he would find inspiration once within the Mianus Warren, some thunderbolt delivering a simple, elegant solution with all the grace of poetry. And Fisher Keltat apparently said poetry and sorcery were the twin edges to the knife in every man's heart. So I feel like that's another thing, like with Duiker as our main character. I think we're really exploring one of our characters that we're following to tell the story of this of Coltane's chain of dogs and maybe part of the apocalypse. The writing of history, the power of words there, I think that also, I think that seems to be pointing towards that theme. So I thought this was a very rich section that like brought a lot of insights to the rest of the story.
Great points. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm with you. It is interesting how illusion magic kind of functions inherently as this metaphor for the way people blur the lines between their subjective reality and the objective reality that we all live in.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And it was also really cool to me how illusion magic felt like, what could you possibly do with that? How are you going to help? Like Warren of boat repair was probably better for you to but yeah, he got them out, and in maybe like by renting the fabric of space-time, apparently he brought them out and called a dragon upon them.
It's a very cool way of trying to use illusion magic, right? Like,
Yeah.
That sort of metaphysical, metaphorical plane that is done is just very cool and very creative.
Yep, definitely. So they come out on this island, and then we meet Pust. No, we don't meet Pust. We meet. Oh, this is the section where we find out that Pust has kind of tricked Upsalar, so to speak, to maybe considering accepting the role of Shaik for the apocalypse.
Yep, I think, a little before that too, there's a lot of exposition in this section,
Mhm.
which is why maybe it was a little slower, although I did actually really enjoy it. I don't know what worked less well for Steve here, but I did find it also interesting that they kind of explicitly spell out that the path of hands and all the Soul Taken and divers are kind of trying to maximize, or like they're like playing out the circle of life and kind of the battle for like to be the top predator in the most literal way, in that there's, you know, the explicit notion that becoming Soul Taken or divers is becoming, you know, more feral and seeking to dominate even more. It's like embracing a predatorial mindset. Now we're also invited to kind of challenge that belief, but it's an interesting idea, and I think definitely again plays into the idea of like, you know, that negative human animal inside all of us.
Yeah.
Steve,
And sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Steve, what was? I mean, I guess we're still pretty early, but I'm curious what was so much more difficult for you that like you didn't enjoy as much in these chapters.
I think it was mostly chapter 12 with the, we're just jumping around to different characters, and we have like how many different groups? We have several different groups that are experiencing different things. And there's a few new or newer names now.
Yeah.
That it's just hard to keep track of all the different groups, all the different things that are helping or hurting them, every scenario that they're in, what their motivations are. It's just a lot to keep track of. And I think the easiest one is the Culp group, because that's kind of the one we've been following, but the other ones are it gets a little confusing for me sometimes.
The Culp group definitely feels more intimate. You know, I mean, they've had some, particularly our triumvirate that is split up in this section of Fellison, Haboric, and Bowden. Like, they just have so many scenes together and have such a visceral impact on each other that they are very. It does feel like more personal and easier to kind of like latch on to them. Like, they're definitely some of the characters that I remember best from like the first time I read this book. You know, so I hear you there. As opposed to like the military stuff, the Marine stuff, there are so many named characters. They just keep throwing new Marines at you and new Wiccans, and you know, we get Lowell here, who I don't even know, is this where he was introduced? It's crazy because he has some great dialogue in this section, but like wild to just give that dialogue to just this random character, you know. But that's definitely the Book of the Fallen for you.
Forget where we were told, but I think he was apparently the character that was it this guy that Tweaker was standing next to when the red plates showed up, or when the Wiccans showed up. One of that. So we have met a Lull before, but I
met him
don't
when he came back.
when he came, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because he's one of the leadership. Is he a captain, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was.
Captain
He
Sinclair.
must have been in the briefings, right, with Coltane. I'm pretty sure he was at least named before, but I don't remember if we met him.
Yeah, we saw him briefly in like a meeting. That was
Mm,
about it, though.
right. What were we saying about him?
I'm
Yeah.
curious. So, circling back to, you know, how there's a lot of exposition in this section. I mean, we kind of open up with like a shitload of exposition being dropped and then like explicitly spelling out some of what's going on here. So I talked about the Path of Hand stuff, but we also get more discussion about Trimmer lore. Do people feel like they have a better idea of kind of what's going on? I mean, obviously Azath houses are inherently mysterious. That's kind of the point. But is everyone kind of more comfortable with Trimmer lore conceptually? Or Dan, I saw you kind of making a face.
No, I was kind of thinking when we were saying like the expedition about the as of houses, it seemed like they're like common knowledge that they're there. I guess people don't want to say exactly what they are. They have like what
It's
is
not
it?
that they don't want to say, they don't know what they are.
I guess, but it seemed kind of like people they were saying like people have all these superstitions about as of houses where they're just unlucky or whatever. But it seemed like, you know, it was kind of implying, at least to me, that people know they're like more powerful but don't want to think about it or don't want to deal with it. Sort of. But yeah, I didn't know they were like. I didn't realize they were so. People just saw them there. They knew they're there. I thought it was like a secret thing, but I guess not.
Well, like they talk about, there's the one in Malice City that's
Yeah.
just there, and everyone kind of just lives around it. And
I was gonna
it's
say
like if you're like,
Malazan's probably no more because there's one right there.
yeah, I would imagine that the majority of people aren't like particularly familiar, or maybe don't even know of Azath houses. Maybe have heard fairy tales or something. But yeah, the Malazans in the city at least certainly know they're real. And I mean, yeah, if you lived in a city with like a magic house where when people go into it, they don't come back out, like, I guess that's one of the crucial details. We haven't been inside one of them yet, but I would certainly say that it is a notable point that they have a bunch of superstitions around them.
But it wasn't also clear to me that they actually knew what this was. It felt more like a haunted house situation, that there's just something up with that house and people live around it. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
I guess
I mean, I
some
think that,
people know about
yeah,
it, but Mhm.
I think there is a lot of mystery, right? And probably a lot of rumors and, yeah, superstitions going around about what exactly it is. But like, I'm sure some shithead kids have like tried to get inside.
He
But the
got
question is
trapped in
also like,
forever.
like, can they even get inside? Like, is it going to open for them? The Azath houses are mysterious. They don't just like, you can't just like stroll in, theoretically.
Yeah. We know they trap powerful entities, so do they reject anything that's not powerful enough? Like, do you have to have a base level of power to enter?
Do they
So,
look like normal houses, or if it's just like houses, as in like a box or something?
I'm pretty sure they're supposed to look more kind of naturalistic.
Okay.
the one in Darujistan just grew out of the earth, right? I
Right.
kind of imagine it with a lot of plants growing around it, but it might just look like an overgrown, mismanaged house.
That's kind of what I imagine. But
Yeah.
like slightly more like earthen. I don't know, like
Mm.
almost made out of the earth itself.
Mm.
But you think it looks like something that someone made, sort of, not like something that nature made.
Yes.
Okay.
I do think that there's a structure to it, that it does look like a house in some way. But that may just be my imagination. That's not like a spoiler thing or anything. Like that's just kind of how I picture it in my head.
I remember there being like some kind of growth or like vines or a tree
Yes.
growing around the
Yeah.
house. So
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine a really large witch's cottage.
Yeah. I see that. I vibe
Yeah.
with that.
So, you were talking about the thing about the, what was it? Path of Hands. Yeah, same. I think Fiddler tells I forget who explains it to him. One of the to Mapo, maybe, about when Mapo says, "Oh, these beasts are going to want to rule," and blah blah blah. And Fiddler's like, "Why are you talking about? They are the only ones who want it. Humans have wanted it too." Which, yeah, that made me think of the parallel you drew between that and the war going on, Carl. But
That was something I definitely
yeah,
latched on to for the same reason. And I was like keeping my eye out for it. And I didn't remember them ever kind of laying out the metaphor so explicitly, but they really did.
yeah,
It is interesting. It's blowing my mind actually how much, I think I said this in Gardens of the Moon too, but how much Steven Erikson does just explicitly tell us. So there's just so much going on that like it's easy to miss things. Like, we're at the point now where there's a thing that Shadow Throne says when he appears in chapter 12, where he lays out a like major plot twist in the story. He basically walks up to stating exactly what his plan is, and it's just like kind of casually said. It's crazy. I'm not gonna go into more detail because I mean it's there, but in some ways it's not a spoiler at this point. But it's also like not explicitly like step by step laid out.
you mean for this book, right? Not for the series. Okay, for
Yes,
this
for
book,
this
I
book
think I noticed. Yeah,
specifically,
yeah.
what Shadow and Pust in particular is doing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
I
Shadow
think I
Throne
remember
straight
that
up
line.
says it.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I was like reading that. I was like, I can't believe he just like drops that in the middle of this book. That's
Yeah.
wild.
And I think Bust says something too.
He
Uh,
does, yeah.
Yeah.
and I guess these guys guess something too. Mapo guesses something that may or may not be true, or what may
I
be
mean, yeah, we
happening
have
later.
again. I mean, part of it that they talk about repeatedly is that the idea of making Apsalar Shaik reborn. So that's a major
Yeah.
thing to definitely latch on to, right? And using her father as bait, basically, her father who is servant.
How
Everyone
would
following
did
that part?
Shadowthrone know that Apsalar was going to end up in the desert here, where she was going to find her father? Did he know that all this stuff was going to happen?
Well, remember, Puss wasn't like always there. So I imagine after she was kind of transferred over, he's adapting and playing. You know, I don't think it was like I knew when when Cotillion first possessed her that this is what we were gonna do. I think it was like, oh, Shaik is dead and Apsalar is here. We can play with this or
Okay.
something before that. I mean, maybe even before that because Servant was around before that. I think, but he'd been
I
keeping
thought,
her in his back pocket.
how long had Puss been there? I assume he'd been there for years. That was my assumption, but actually I don't remember if it's mentioned anywhere. Is it maybe recent? He's only been there for like a couple of months, maybe?
I mean, I think my initial impression was also that he had been there for years, but my read this time around, I feel like he's a more recent arrival. Like we see him kind of wandering in with Servant, so I don't know. I guess it is vague.
Okay.
It's certainly not explicitly stated. Not that I noticed, at least.
So how long was it since um, Apsalar had been in the army for several years, right?
2 years.
For
Yeah.
2 years? Just
Mhm.
two?
Yep.
Interesting. Okay. So do we think that that boat crashed down below in the basement immediately after, like when she was taken, that they took the boat too and brought it to this temple, in which case Past has to have been there for 2
Yeah,
years.
must have, yeah. Unless it got stuck somewhere in a warren for years or something.
Maybe.
I
Yeah,
don't know,
that's a possibility.
I guess.
Yeah.
But we have no idea how he got there, so
Yeah. And the thing Fiddler says about the father being complicit in getting this Apsalar to become Shaik business, that was interesting. Like we haven't heard the guy say anything at all. But what would he
yeah.
have been told to convince him to,
I thought
I
there
don't want
was
to say
something about it.
deceive, but get his daughter to do this thing? That,
Yeah.
yeah.
One thing I just thought was, which is interesting, is that connects with the previous chapter or the same chapter when they're talking about Visilanda, and then Colby's saying, oh, realms are connected, worlds are connected, so water goes to water and land goes to land. But in the case of a boat, did it go from water to land? How does that work? That's the opposite, right?
You mean when they all jumped out of the boat and they
Well,
went to
no, the
land?
boat, the Apsalar's father's boat.
Oh, I
Because it
see what
must
you
have been
mean.
in the
Okay.
water, I
This
guess, when
boat.
he got
Mm-hmm.
taken. Otherwise, why is the boat there? But he went into the middle of a desert, which is the opposite of, I guess, where it was before. I don't know if there's something to it or it just
Well, he
doesn't matter.
wasn't traveling between warrens like the other guys were. He was just snatched up. I mean, by Shadow Throne, who's a god. So I think that's different.
I assume he must have gone through a warren, like when he was snatched up, even by Shadowthrone. He must have taken it into the Shadow Warren or something to
Right.
carry him around.
Mm.
I assumed. Otherwise, how would their boat get there? Because I think they say like the boat is too big to fit through the door. So I assumed it must have gone through like different, like a warren or something.
Yeah, it had to go through Warrens. Yeah, you're right. And it must have been Shadow Warren, right?
I guess. We haven't seen water in the Shadow Warren though, so I don't know how that works either.
Does it have to be somewhere that currently has water? Because I'm wondering, we've been told that Raraku used to be a sea.
Yeah.
And I wonder if like sea to sea transition, except the sea now no longer has water.
I don't know. I'm just wondering if there's some more meaning to it, or if it's just not, doesn't matter.
Yeah, I expect it's probably the latter, or it's using some mechanics that aren't fully explained, but probably makes sense. I don't know.
Okay, fair enough.
Maybe. I don't know. Yeah, that is an interesting point about transitions between warrants. And I'm trying to remember whether that like really plays a big role elsewhere in the series, because there's a few things that came up in Gardens of the Moon, for instance, that I'm fairly sure we never see again in the rest of the series. Um, so I wonder, like some of the rules about the magic laid out here, I think it's possible that they get ignored later in the series, or they don't, or and then like going back to the thing about um unreliable narrators and people, stating what they believe, etc. Like since we are getting all this information from character POVs, it's possible that that's just what cult thinks is true, but maybe others have other ways to manipulate the warrants and magic in different ways.
True. I think
And
it
then
is
while
worth. No, go ahead, Shannon. Go ahead.
no, you go.
I was my only little addition was that we know, or at least we have been told, right, that the Shadow Warren that we have previously seen, that Shadow Throne occupies, is a branch of Curled Emerlon, which we have now been introduced to, which is the Elder Warren of Shadow, which is the flooded Warren that they have been traveling through. I see you laughing, Steve. I know, it gets crazy. And so I think the implication, in my head at least, would be that if there's a flooded part of Curled Emerlon, then there must be water somewhere in the younger Shadow Warren, because they are related. They don't exist independently of each other.
I see. They seem very different though. I don't know, like
They
the
are
feeling.
Yeah, no, you're right. They're definitely different, but they are connected. I mean,
Yeah.
the new Shadow Warren is explicitly birthed of Emerlon, Curled Emerlon.
Yeah.
Or at least that's what we're told. I guess
Okay.
that also that could be bullshit too. I mean, that's the thing with unreliable narrators, right? Is theoretically any of this could be wrong, but
Well, we do have a new information of like all the different layers inside the Shadow Warren, right? The Imperial Warren, I guess. Sorry. The Where was that?
Remind me what that was.
I think they thought he went there and there was like a well or a hole or something, and then he saw there was like so many different layers with bones and I don't know, detritus or other things, and he was saying like, "Oh, this is like centuries and thousands of years."
Yeah,
So
there's all all the ashes and all the bones. So there's
yeah,
something
something
happened
happened.
there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think at this point we have enough information to know what's going on with the Imperial Warren. But except now we know that there's, a foot deep of bones and ashes. So it's pretty
Yeah.
gruesome. But one thing I did want to mention while we were here with Mappo and Akarim is I like that we did get a mention of Dasa Multor, who's probably my favorite Malazan character. But just offhandedly, Mappo's talking about the Decembre's temple, and then he says Decembre, or thinks Decembre, the cult of Dasa. So we get a connection between Dasa Multor and Decembre, which we don't know a whole lot yet. We know Dasa Multor was the first sword of the Empire. He worshipped Hood. They've told us that he turned his back on Hood and something bad happened. And so now we know that he's somehow connected to this other god, Decembre, the Lord of Tragedy, is what they called him in the persona whatever in the first book. So I just thought, keeping track of Dassam and the history with him may come up again.
Maybe. Yeah.
Or maybe not.
That's pretty cool.
Or maybe not.
We don't
Maybe
But
not.
I love Dassam.
Maybe.
So, we
Yeah.
got a little info on Dassam.
Yeah.
yeah, great point, Shannon. Again, another one of those. I can't believe they just lay it out like that. it really is wild. Like he'll just like in one sentence just like drop some major lore, and then I completely forget about it for several books, and then it's like, oh wait, and then it's plot relevant, and you're like, oh wait, they said that way back in Gardens of the Moon. That's crazy.
But a lot of the time there's like a random line which is not plot relevant, so you're like, I don't know which one is gonna be.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Mm.
And then we also, in the same section, we get mention of the holds. That there's something more ancient than the houses, the holds, more elemental, more raw and primitive. Which again, I think at this point in the book we don't have a lot to go on, but just that's a thing. There was something called the holds before there were houses. With
Have it mentioned in
regard to
Guardians
the
of
deck
the
of
Moon
dragon.
2? Or am I imagining it? Are the
I
holds
think there was like
mentioned
one
in Guardians
mention
of
of
the
a
Moon
hold,
2? Okay.
but it was pretty vague.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think this is the first time they really mention the holds before the houses. Like it's a little more connected.
What they are.
And they were more. Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised to see the thing about holds because I remember it being explained in detail in a much later book, but it was mentioned here. A lot of things are mentioned or like the slight offhand references to that come up in later books, which I'm surprised by that they were mentioned. And I just went over my head the first time.
100%.
Yeah.
Another thing that is laid out for us finally, after kind of dancing around it for the entire book so far, is the deal with Icarium. I mean, Fiddler seems to not know exactly what's true and what's not about him, but Icarium has historically done things other than just build giant mysterious timepieces. He has also committed genocides, massacred entire populations. At least those are the stories Fiddler's heard. And I think it's fair to say that that aligns with a lot of what Mappo seems to be concerned about.
But we still don't know why, right? We don't know what actually happened, right?
We
know
certainly don't know explicit details of any singular event. But I think at this point it is safe to piece together that Icarium has certain anger issues.
Yeah.
And for one reason or another, he does not remember the past violence he's done. And he's trying to, learn his past. Obviously, that would be a concern if your past is, I've committed genocides. And Mappo is therefore, it's so sad. The way he, manipulates Icarium, they're so tragic. Talking about Lord of Tragedy, oh my God.
It's like, we're here again.
Now,
these questions
at this
again.
point, do we have any idea why he's doing this? Like, what? Is he just protecting Icarium from knowing what he's done? Like, I don't know.
It just seems that he has been charged for some reason by the Nameless Ones to make sure that Icarium never remembers.
Yeah.
And we don't know why. I don't know what my theory is right now, but I think the first time around, I was like, he can't remember because if he does, he will go into a genocidal rage again. Remembering that he committed genocide will make him angry enough to do it again. I don't think that that's true. So it is.
I had the
curious.
same thought in the past, but it also, it doesn't make any sense to really. Now that I think about that.
Yeah, given how a compassionate a person he seems to be, it seems. I mean, maybe it will break him, like not angered necessarily, but maybe the thought that he has committed all of that will break him and then put him in the state again where he has that fit of rage. Basically, has Mappo been charged to make sure that he doesn't lose his shit again, or is it something else?
I mean, I think that's the crucial part. I guess it's still vague at this point. But I do feel like Mappo is a caretaker, as much taking care of the world as Icarium because of the concerns about what Icarium might do. The one little bit of pushback I would have to the idea that if he discovered his past, that wouldn't necessarily lead to him roid raging and murdering people is, I mean, we don't know why, but what if the motivation for why he did it, remembering that would then motivate him to act on it again?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. because that would be. But I don't remember actually the reason. I think it's explained later, but I can't remember for the life of me the reason. But yeah, but
did
I
anybody
don't know
else here think it
why.
was? I was gonna say, does anybody else here think it was weird though that like Mappo just opens up to Fiddler, this guy that he like just met, and like, oh yeah, I'm keeping things from this guy. Like I
I
don't
guess
know, it just
Fiddler does know a lot of these stories, so maybe he's like, oh, this guy seems to know a lot of things, so maybe I can trust him. Seems like a smart person or
yeah,
something, or
maybe you just need to open up to somebody.
That's
Spend
actually kind
hundreds
of
of
my
years of
feeling.
keeping
Yeah,
this.
exactly. Like
Here's
I
somebody
definitely
who's kind of figured it out.
Hmm.
right. I definitely
Yeah,
read it as like Fiddler is an open ear, and Mappo has talked to like no one other than Akarium for who knows how long, and so he is kind of desperate. I mean, imagine like there's a reason people just go to like the most basic talk therapy, where like the main point is just to like talk at your therapist about your problems because it's very cathartic. And you know, Mappo, he doesn't have any other friends or family members or a therapist to talk to.
yeah.
You know,
He
he just
can
has
talk to
Yeah,
Akarium.
Ikarium about his problems, right?
Exactly. Like that's so
yeah.
he's like, yeah, for this guy, like he kind of understands what's going on. So here's me, you know,
Hmm.
venting about
I mean, you
my
can't really talk to Karim about a whole lot. I mean, imagine your best friend is this guy that can't remember you. Like, he
Yeah,
seems like the nicest, sweetest guy most of the time, except for those times he goes into genocidal rages. But you know, yeah, that actually, I'm just gonna, my quote for this whole section was in this. It says, it's Fiddler thinking. He said, "Has Akarium never wondered, never questioned the centuries-long partnership? And what is a friendship to the Jag? Without memory, it's an illusion, an agreement taken on faith and faith alone. How on earth is Akarium's generosity born from that?" And like that really gives us a view into Akarium. Like, cause think what that would be like. Like you don't remember anything, and you only have like one friend, your best friend, and he's only your best friend because he tells you he's your best friend. You don't actually know anything. You don't have any shared memories of things we've done together. Like that's
yeah,
sad, but also like wow, like Akarium, that gives you his character right there. That he's that trusting.
yeah. For some reason, in my mind, when you guys were talking about, oh, he did all these bad things, so who knows who he really is and stuff like that, I was like, maybe it's like, I don't know, if Hitler lost his memory and the only thing he remembers is the painting and loving dogs or something, and then he has a guy that comes with him, he's like, oh, as long as you don't remember, he's like a really nice person, right? But I guess we don't know why Ikariam did all of the things he did and how he forgot his memory, but that's sort of the image that was coming to my mind.
So I see. Okay, I have two things to say. One, I remember past. I forget if it was in this section or the previous section where he tells Mapo that you're. I mean, I forget the exact phrase, but he says something to the effect that isn't your friend fond of meting out justice? Like that's what he does.
Mm.
And today we learned that he does that by apparently committing genocide. The second thing I have to say is go Carl. Your name is today Icarium apologist. So I like your response to that.
yeah, yeah, so for the chat you can't see in Riverside, you can change your names, and I changed my name to Akarium Apologist, as Varsha mentioned. I would say I'm not actually an Akarium apologist, but I thought it was hysterical to name myself that, so I named myself that. I do love Akarium as a character. I mean, I think he's awesome. Just like a really interesting character at a lot of levels. But I'm not going to excuse the genocides. I mean, I
I
think
hope
that
he didn't actually commit genocide. I don't know, because I can't imagine any way of excusing that, whatever someone did to cause that, right? I don't know. I can't remember, yeah, as I said before, I can't remember what
Well,
actually happened.
we're saying genocide, but I think like all it said so far is like, death is in his wake. And we saw earlier in this
Yeah,
book when he killed one of those divers or something, he didn't remember it afterwards. But we see how powerful and
yeah,
deadly he can be when he's fired up.
yeah. But
So
the divers attack them, right? So
Mhm.
I mean, that's self-defense.
Yeah.
I think so.
I like how. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I think part of what is interesting to me about Ikariam is the moral quandary he presents as a character. The question of this person who has done unimaginably horrible things, but does not remember them and is otherwise really decent. Like, how guilty are they? Right? Like again, it's the illusion thing, right? I mean, that you were talking about, Varsha, where it's like, what is the nature of reality and how we go through it? How do we judge things when the subjective and the objective don't meet? Where they in many ways seem to be opposed to each other.
Yeah. Think about my Hitler analogy, right? It's perfect. No, a really more apt one would be like in a jury trial when someone is deemed like not of sane mind, right?
Right.
It's kind of like that.
I do think Ikariam is fascinating because I think of him as like it's like, oh, like I'm a really nice guy until my temper gets up and then I beat my kids. Well, I'm not a really nice guy, am I? But but what if I forgot in between? And I was just always that nice guy until I got mad, but then I'd forget. And it's like, well, you're still not really a nice guy, but you think you're a nice guy.
That's a good point.
Part of it is also like we don't understand why he is this way, right?
Yeah.
What is it
true.
about his anger, right? Like, was he cursed in some way? What has been done to him to make him like this? And so I think the mystery is also part of the moral quandary where like we don't know. So how do we judge him? Do we judge him? And I think that's kind of the point of his character. Like Steven Erikson wants us to ask that question, right? Wants us to be wrestling with like how guilty should we hold him? Should we just be like he should be locked in a prison and never allowed to see the light of day again? Should he be executed? Like, should we let him off the hook? Like, what do you do with someone like this? And as a society, and then even just as an individual, like, how do you feel about?
I think without knowing the details, it's impossible to say, right?
Absolutely.
Who
I think
knows?
the uncertainty is kind of the point.
He should probably be in jail, though, in any case, because he is a danger for society in any case.
This definitely seems like a situation
powerful for a jail.
Yeah, like this seems like a situation where like an Azat house eating him might be a good thing,
Yeah.
Right.
Or maybe being with people that he can't, very powerful people that he can't kill or something.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing you brought up because the Soul Taken and Divers are supposedly very, very powerful, and they are all walking on eggshells around Icarium. They, in one of the opening scenes, they're like, "Oh, you're Icarium." The bear says, "I want to kill you," and he's like, they realize who he is, and they're like, "Okay, cool. I'll just go now. Please forget I was ever here." And now during this walk through the whirlwind, apparently a bunch of these people are just sort of skirting around the edges because they know that Icarium's in the neighborhood. So the question is, are there very many more powerful people than Icarium?
Yeah.
We know Rake is a really powerful being from a previous book, but he's soul taken. So we could guess maybe that he has power equal to a soul taken, maybe a bit more than that. And the Soul Taken are all afraid. Several of them together are all afraid of Icarium. So, yeah, we'll see.
My last thought about Icarium for these chapters, at least, is I'm going to take a big swing for the fences here. It's something that I just thought of as we were talking, which is, what if he in some ways functions as a metaphor for humanity? Now, hold up here, okay? Because this gets complicated because obviously having one person represent a whole species is messy, right? Because you're talking about theoretically a bunch of individuals. But, at what point is the individual, especially on like a cosmic scale, at what point is like a species more than, the individual? Anyway, the point, it's a moral quandary, my point. And so, the idea that he commits these unimaginable atrocities, but continuously forgets about them, doesn't remember them. You know, in the same way that like humankind, you know, children are dying. We're constantly murdering one another. You know, we live in the most peaceful age in human history, but like there are still unimaginable atrocities being committed every day all over the world. And yet there is a lot of goodness in how we act day to day and how we treat one another. And so, you know, even though we keep, you know, forgetting the lessons of history, repeating ourselves and doing the same terrible things over and over again, you know, are we like inherently culpable as an entire species? I mean, I guess the idea of like, if you lock continuing this metaphor, and I don't know if this is intended or if I'm, you know, reaching or anything, but this was just something that occurred to me. You know, do you lock up humanity in the same way, you know, we think lock up Icarium, like if you talk about on like an intergalactic scale, right? You know, I mean, maybe that's why no aliens have visited us, is because we're Icarium. Period.
I think that's a great point. And you also said something that will apply to the rest of the series, but I'll talk about that in the spoiler section in the forum. But I don't think you're reaching at all. I think that's brilliant, and it does tie back to the themes about history that we are getting to explore through Tweaker, and how people keep saying over and over again about those who don't read history are doomed to repeat it, etc. Like that's the cliche, and I think some of our characters seem to share that opinion. And that built on top of the thing about dying civilizations over and over again, like the layering of civilizations that have all died, which Icarium. So there's two ways to commit genocide, right? Like one is, I hate this group of people, I'm going to find, like the Tilanimas way, basically. I'm going to kill every last Jagut. Or it could be something happened in this town that I'm unhappy about, so I'm going to raise it to the ground, which isn't which is horrible, but isn't necessarily intentional genocide, if that makes sense. So
I think that counts as genocide.
yeah, I mean, it could have that whole city is like all the people of that kind are only, like, I've heard the word genocide used like that when just a large number of people are killed.
I think in the definition by the ICC, there's a strict.
I see.
I think that's actually a strict definition, and
does Icarium fit the legal definition of genocide?
What is ICC?
The International Court of something.
Okay.
Or something. But I think one of the things for genocide is like there needs to be intention against a specific group. Otherwise, it's just like massacre or something.
Yeah. That makes sense, and I think that's the way. Like I've heard it used recently in the other way, but anyway, It is possible that, you know, there wasn't intention and he raised the whole people to the ground accidentally on purpose, and that got interpreted as genocide. Anyway, my point is
potentially on purpose.
That I think there is very much a direct parallel to the layering of dead civilizations with the layering of dead things that Icarium supposedly leaves in his wake. I think that's a brilliant point, Carl. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It is something I'm actually curious about bringing up with, if you ever talk to Steven Erikson, because I'd be curious to hear his thoughts, because that's a question I haven't seen anyone pose to him. If it's out there, if someone knows of it, please leave it in the comments, because I'm always intrigued by what Steven Erikson has to say about these characters and his stories and his intent.
Yes, like that. I have to remember the other thing to bring up in the spoiler section. But
writing this down. All right. So what's next?
What is next?
I don't have the pages opened. It's Kalam, maybe.
Yeah.
Yes.
Kalam.
Yeah.
The crucified kids.
Oh yes.
Woof.
Oh, was that whose topic was that? Shannon, I think. Okay, we'll get to that when Shannon comes
his
back.
was the kid. Well, the singular. I mean, I guess, yeah, that is the next.
Yeah.
Never mind, ignore me. That's all one thing. That's one storyline.
Okay, so let's do that one when Shannon's back. What was your thing, Steve?
I was just going to mention that we're just going to bring up the kids. Kind of, it all fits into that. There's Shannon.
Oh, cool. Shannon's back.
Let's
So
talk about dead kids.
kids.
Let's talk about dead kids.
Dead kids. They're not dead. They're
Well,
Crucified.
demon now, I guess.
close to being. Well, they're undead now, right?
Well,
Yeah,
are they?
this
They
is,
were about to die. Sorry,
Mhm.
go ahead, Shannon.
yeah, I don't think they were dead. I think they were all force healed or whatever they call it. So they're like traumatically healed. But yeah, like apt. It's like we see this monster and think of her as a demon and she's so bad, but then she takes it upon herself to save. I think is it 1,300
Mm-hmm.
children that were being killed
Yeah.
by the
Yeah.
rebels, the Malazan kids.
Mhm.
And I love the scene with Shadowthorn. He's like, what am I gonna do with all these kids? And he's like, servants.
So
An
how
army.
big,
An army
how
of
big do you
servants.
think the Shadow Keep is? What am I gonna do with that
Yeah.
many servants?
I don't. It made me think that Shadowthrone maybe is a little bit better than people think he is.
Mhm.
Like, because he did do this, like for Apt, save all these kids. However, he also did massacre all those people at the beginning of the first book, so he's not all good. But he's, I guess he's not all evil. I don't know. It kind of like made Apt a real character here. Like, she was just kind of this demon that was supposedly taken over by the rebels, but then was going along with Kalam, helping him out. But now she kind of went off on her own, saved these kids, and it is like a core memory of reading this book the first time. This what they did to that other kid with giving him the one big eye, and I mean it's kind of terrifying.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I just really liked this little bit. Like I said, I think it gave us a little bit to kind of chew on as far as like what's Shadowthrone really like, and
Mhm.
just because this thing looks like a monster doesn't mean it's a monster.
I love Shadowthrone being such a like whiny kind of sniveling, like he's always described as giggling. Like I just love how he's a great character, just great characterization. The things he does, like it's just awesome. And he has all of these schemes, but he's so whiny, and he's just he is hilarious. I love Shadowthrone. I'm always here for more Shadowthrone. And Apt, similarly, I adore. I think I spoiled that when she first appeared, but I love Apt. Best girl, Apt. She's done nothing wrong. If she has one defender, I am the defender. I will defend her until my dying days. Apt, best girl.
Do we know where she came from? Like, why was she with Shaikh before, and why was she sent with Kalam? Do we know? Did I miss something? Or
Well, she's a demon.
Yeah.
And then kind of lays out a little bit here. But yeah, they're associated with Shadowthrone's Warren.
Mhm.
And this particular Aptorian, Apt, she fell from favor with the Aptorian Lord. So
Yeah.
there's something we don't know that she fell out of favor with the Aptorian Lord, but she's working with Apt or with Shadowthrone, and I believe she was there to like spy on him and kind of see what's going on. She's
All right.
kind of Shadowthrone's agent, like she's his,
Hmm.
in the middle of this whirlwind. Like,
Okay.
I mean, kind of the same as
So
his priest,
Shadowthrone
but
was working with Shaikh, like they're working together.
no,
No,
Shadowthrone's doing his own thing.
it seems
He's
so, but
always
like
doing his own.
but it seems like okay, well, there's this demon, but he's also following the commands of Shaikh, and now
Well,
he's also
remember
trying to
Shaikh?
send. Yeah.
Well, remember Shaikh claimed to that she was controlling him or
Yeah.
controlling her, but I think it's at this point it's clear that was never true. Like I don't think
I see.
like yeah. because I think they're the ones who told us that they think that it was that the Apt was there spying on them or something for Shadow Throne, or I think they know that. I think they knew that the Aptorians have something to do with Shadow.
I see.
But yeah.
But Shaik sent Apt to protect Kalam, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Or
but,
to go
but
with
we don't
him,
know.
To escort him.
To escort him.
I don't know. You
right.
could look at that different ways.
Yeah, that's true. Like get him out of sight where he can't do any harm. And Shadow Throne implies that Apt is sort of off doing her own thing, not really doing what he wants. Like, yeah, you've been gone long, first with Shaik, now hanging out with this Kalam guy, and now you've brought me all these deadish, nearly dead children to save. Yeah, I found that whole thing really, really sweet. I'd forgotten that Apt does that until Kalam sees the dead child, and I'm like, I know what's gonna happen. But yeah, I think Apt notices that Kalam's being really sad about this kid that he cannot save, and Apt's like, hold my beer, and goes and brings the kids to Shadow Throne to heal. That was brilliant. And then the exchange between the two of them, we don't hear App's side of the conversation. We just hear Shadow Throne's responses to them, which are really cool. It's like listening in on one side of the phone call, right? And it
Very
was
like cartoon like when there's a
Yeah.
guy talking with his animal and
yeah,
interpreting.
exactly.
I love it. It gets me every time. All the like clicks she makes. Like I'm trying to think of like what like movie Alien or movie.
Oh no, it's like Han Solo and Chewbacca, right?
Certainly, yeah, similar. That's the vibe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I love Apt. I think, she's a fully independent, like she has agency. She acts on it. I don't even think she saves the kids because of Kalam. I think she does it because she wants to do it.
Mm.
And, hence her even adopting one of them, which is so crazy.
Yeah, it's
I
like
love
this one. I want it to look like me. It'll be
Yeah.
my child.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's so cute. It's so sweet.
I mean, maybe she
And
should
then-
have asked him, but I don't know if it's cute.
The
He
kid's
seemed
whole
pretty
family's
happy
dead.
later on when they're
Yeah.
killing the Semp god or what's left of it.
Right,
Maybe.
yeah. She's killing the Sam god, and then the kid is grabbing at it like it's a random toy, and then after shoving it out of the kid's way. That was really cute. Oh. I need to
Feel
read
something
these why
must
you
have
were
changed
cute.
in the kid's brain when this whole thing
100.
happened, right? He's not the same person as he was before, right?
Yeah, that has to be true. Like, he seems to have some weird insectoid prismatic eye now, where he can probably see. Have we been told that? I think the eye was described, and he can probably see into other dimensions or worlds
Really?
or something.
Okay.
I don't know. I feel like that was a description we got. I don't know if
Well,
I'm
maybe.
dropping a spoiler here or or if that's the description we got, but the eye was interesting. I don't think I'm spoiling anything. I don't remember what happens with the kid.
So freaky, so cute. I
Yeah.
love it. I
Yes.
love playing with demons that way. They're so often just mindless monsters in fantasy. And here we have like one that full of agency, that shows compassion, that acts in ways that just seem so human. It's a lot of fun. I also want to, like, before the Sleepworn takes Steve, what was it that you wanted to talk about again, Steve? We can jump to it. I know we're reaching the end of your time.
Nothing too well. Just mostly just chapter 12 being a lot of things going on. The whole, not to jump too far ahead, but the whole nobles are eating the babies, and that was some dark shit.
Well, I think it was actually the cattle dogs that are eating the children. Like, that was the rumor, was of the nobles, but
yeah.
didn't we see like the cattle dogs gnawing on bones?
Everyone is eating the kids.
Yeah.
Everyone's eating the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, lots of kid deaths.
I mean, yeah, you're hungry and you're taking away also a mouth that needs to eat. Win-win.
Yes. I did think it was strange. I don't remember if we mentioned it, but about the servant being Sari's dad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is where we find out in these chapters. And Iskaral Past has been spouting a life given for a life taken, and we finally, I think, learn what that means. I guess they saved the father in exchange for taking Apsalar's, taking possession of Apsalar. But that seems moot now that they want her to be Shaikh and whatever that entails. That and basically manipulating her into that. So I don't know that Past can really make that claim, but we'll see where it goes. Because now it seems they've taken 2 lives, not given one and taken one, you know?
They're taking a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. What
Well,
else?
they gave that an arm. I mean, that's got to count for something.
That's true. One arm looked newer than the other. How can you
Yeah.
tell? That was
Give him a
funny.
new arm.
He got a new arm. Uh,
So,
any other topics? We have to talk about Felicin and that city of dead people, but
I mean, there's a lot that goes on in chapter 12. I mean, I was just looking at it. I mean, you
yeah.
have
Yeah.
the fight with the reborn simp god who's possessed one of the earth spirits, which is
Oh, yeah.
crazy. That's another thing I did not remember happening in this book at all. So that reading that was like reading it fresh. We have Lostara. Is that her name? Lostara teaming up with Pearl,
Sorry,
who's
Yelp
a
and
claw,
Pearl.
who appears covered in ash from the Imperial Warren. And they were hunting down Kalam, but they got sidetracked. And it seems like the Empress knows that Kalam is coming for her head. Another major thing. What
And I did
else?
want to, while you were saying that, this is a new Pearl that we got, who's a claw, as opposed to the Pearl that was, the Pearl that had claws in the last book.
Pearl
That was
that
a
had
demon.
claws.
So, what a weird name to reuse between 2 books. But
Yeah.
Pearl, I guess
That's so true.
Steve likes that name.
Yeah, I thought for a moment that in Gardens of the Moon that was the claw guy, but yeah,
I know
but it
he's
wasn't.
talked. Yeah, I know he's talked in the past about how some characters just like come on the page and he just starts writing their story and the story just grows. Like he likes to surprise himself, which is something I can relate to. Like it's one of the joys of writing is like writing something being like, oh, this is cool, or this character's got so much more going on than I realized when they came on page to drop some exposition. And Pearl to me is one of those characters, it seems like, because he does kind of come out of nowhere. And I think I'll just say that there's more to come with him, and he is definitely I think a scene stealer. His and Lestara's relationship is fun to watch unfold.
Yeah, and Duiker in that Semk demon scene, he sees the star in the body, and he knows it for weapons of the claw, and wonders who the heck was helping them. And Coltane has a moment of fear too when he is told about this intervention, and we find out later that it was Pearl. That was interesting to me because I don't. Well, one for that reveal, I remembered that it was Pearl. It's but the other was the order in which that was told. I don't remember there being many times when something happens and then something else happens that is written as if it is later, but it's actually sort of explaining more about a previous event. It's not exactly a flashback, but it's the same scene from a different character's point of view, except it hasn't happened later. It's the same, and they're not side by side. They're at the end of the chapter after more things have happened too. So that was mildly, I don't want to say confusing, but it was interesting because I don't recall that kind of structure in many other
Yeah.
places in the series.
Absolutely. That also stood out to me.
Felicin and the dead, the
Well,
limestone people.
very, very quickly, while the Felicin stuff, the city is like, that's the thing I wanted to talk about, but I do just want to touch on what a haunting image it is of Duerker walking around the camp and just like watching the dying.
True.
That's just like that cut me deep. Like that section really hit hard. And I was so relieved we got kind of a happy ending in this brief bit with them discovering the water and the rocks, which was again something I did not remember. So that was, really also hit me hard. A very victorious moment. They have what do they say? They have like 2 hours or something to
Yeah, something like that.
get water to like 50,000 people. It's crazy. But I just found, the Duiker stuff definitely very affecting. I guess as I'm talking, I'm remembering how much of this stuff I really liked. So I don't know why. I guess the end of the previous act just hit me so hard that I was like, I guess I didn't realize how much I enjoyed this section too.
Yeah.
There was a lot of really good stuff.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun. A couple of chapters.
Lots of kids dying. Very fun.
Yeah, it's very. I mean, it's not like,
and children getting mutilated.
yeah, but it was like only a page or something. It didn't dwell on it too long.
No, and then there's Duiker walking around and standing with a woman as her baby dies in her arms, and then later on there's finding out the dogs are eating all the dead kids, and all of that. There
Are they
wasn't
though?
that many
We
kids.
don't. Are we? Do we know for sure that that's what's happening?
No, Duiker was told not to look into it
So
because he wouldn't like what he would find.
yeah, maybe if they're eating
Now-
what's those the little critters that worship Iskalpust?
Oh, the Bokarala.
Bokaral.
Yeah, those are kind of like humanoid,
Bokaral.
right? Sort of. Maybe they're eating bad.
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Are
Sure,
they
Dan.
winged monkeys?
It could be. I don't know.
Like the Wicked Witch of the West type deal?
Yeah. Flying monkeys.
Yeah.
That is always what I think of when I think of the Bokarala or the Oz flying monkeys. That's what's burned into my brain.
Not Momo from the last Airbender.
No, sadly, they're not cute in my brain. They're kind of scary.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah, Momo's cute. These ones aren't. Well, they
Yeah.
could be.
Oh wait, okay, that's the other bit I need to highlight. I in the section with Iskarl about how they like worship him now, and they give him gifts, and he like is always trying to like get rid of any like throwing crap at them, and then they reassemble all of his bag of rocks so he can throw them again. They worship it. Like that's so funny. I'm obsessed with that. That's just one of I love how goofy the series can be and just like silly while also including, really bleak, heavy chapters, sections about, children dying. It's just Malazan does it all.
Yes. Yeah, Steve's humor doesn't always work for me, but there are times, but when it does, it really does. And the stuff, here with the Pokerall really worked for me. Just crazy.
It's just so charming and funny, and the animals, worshiping freaking Iskarl of all people is just that's magic.
Yeah.
So the other interesting thing about Pust was Shadow Throne has this moment of regret, I guess, that Quickban used to be a priest of Shadow and he could have groomed him and whatnot, and I'm like, now you have Pust.
Yeah. Yeah,
You
he
could have
says
had
sometimes I'm
Quickban.
afraid of. Yeah, sometimes I'm afraid of what my
Yeah.
high priest is doing.
You could have had Quickban, but now you have Pust.
Yeah. This is what I have to deal with.
I
Probably
think that's a
things.
fair trade.
Yeah.
I'll take Iskarl Pust.
That's true. He's funny. And you always
More
know what he's
funny.
thinking. And that's the other thing about him that's so intriguing. The stuff that he seems like a dumbass who can't even realize that he's thinking out loud and letting everybody in on his plans. But it's possible that, and you never find this out about him, I don't think, whether he's just saying out loud what he needs to manipulate people into getting what he wants, or if
No,
he's really just a
maybe.
dumbass.
Yeah.
I think there has to be some element of that because he's aspected to illusion, which is the magic of trickery, right? Putting on falsehoods.
Hmm.
And Shadow Throne is clearly doing that, right? Shadow Throne is clearly putting on a whole persona. And so the question of like who's the real Shadow Throne, I think, applies just as well to Iskarl Pust. Like who's the real Iskarl Pust?
Yeah.
What is he really into? Like how much, I do feel like he probably is not solely acting. I often find, that people, you see this like theater actors, movie actors, what have you, that oftentimes they have to find like truth, emotion, parts of themselves to bring out when they're playing characters. And I feel like that's probably what Pust and Shadow Throne are doing, bringing out different parts of themselves. Like I'm sure he's like actually like a whack job, but he's also more aware of what he's doing than he lets on.
Maybe Shadow Throne, maybe that's the warrant of like comedy or something. It's not actually warrant of shadows.
Yeah.
That's why everyone is kind of funny.
We have a Lord of Tragedy, right, in December, and so now we got our Lord of Comedy.
Yeah, why can't we have a Lord of Comedy? I would rather be the High Priest of a Lord of Comedy than
100%.
any of the other ones.
100%.
It'll be way more fun.
Yeah, Erikson, Esselmont, get on that. I know you're listening.
Yeah, or the Warren of Food or something, right? Why do gods always have to be so
I kind of
serious?
think Shadow Throne might be the Lord of Comedy.
The ancient gods in Greeks were kind of silly. He is very funny.
It could fit. Certainly, I could see, theatrics and everything. And that's right up his wheelhouse. Illusion would absolutely, a lot of that stuff, it would work.
The more I read about him, the more I imagine him like as a, the comedy villain. Typical comedy villain. So
who it just occurs to me who he reminds me of is Hades from the animated Hercules movie with Disney.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of the vibes I get from Shadow Throne.
True.
Just like in a hooded robe at all times. Like you can never see his face, right?
For sure.
All right, so now we want to talk about the thing I was most excited to talk about, which was the city of petrified people. Absolute insanity that this just existed, and I somehow didn't remember it. I mean, we get a little fun, like kind of D&D adventure situation, and Heboric is losing his mind because of the warring powers within him, and Felison is still being mean, but kind of feeling bad about it and kind of reckoning with who she is. And I mean, just the history you learn about this city is wild, about the power they unleashed, right? That then just like turned them all to stone.
Yeah. They all became soul taken or something.
Some of them did. Some of them started becoming soul taken and got like frozen mid transformation.
Yeah, that was very interesting when Felison was noticing how detailed the sculpture was.
Yeah.
And it turned out later that
And then
that
Heboric,
woman had just been limestone.
Ghost hands started working.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I thought that was
But
really interesting.
oh yeah. Yeah.
That's
He
right.
was able to
Great
sort
point.
of send
Great point.
Culp up. Yeah.
And all the allusions to like, they're mysterious, immortal custodians of the city, of the humans living there, who we are invited to think. Actually, I don't know. I don't think they give us an answer. We do know that some of the people there.
Well, and they reference as being part of the First
Mass.
Empire, right?
So what's going on there? I was about to say this is the First Empire, right? Which is not the First Empire, because the first Empire was theoretically Talon Mass, right? Or the Imass as they were. And even then, debatably they're not, because as far as I know, they're not the eldest of the eldest races. So history is cyclical. But yeah, I love that, right? That they're the quote unquote First Empire, but they're not actually the First Empire, right? The name would have irritated the Talon Mass, Heboric says. It's great. It's also just like an awesome visual that they enter this like cavern that's really damp, full of water coming out of the desert, and there are all these frozen, lifelike people, and some of them are frozen mid like shape shifting, and you just get the sense that, I mean, talk about a genocide. Like, they all just get wiped out. There's no
Yeah.
escaping. If they were there, they got trapped. It's crazy, and the questions like what happened, what was unleashed that turned them all into stone like this. It's haunting and beautiful. It also it does awaken a memory that, like, there's some image out there that I want to say is like official artwork from one of the like deluxe editions of Deadhouse Gates that has a group of like 3 people walking into like a glowing cavern area. And I remember being like, I don't remember that in Deadhouse Gates. Like, I always think of deserts and shit. What scene is that? And it's this scene. So
Interesting,
I'm
yeah.
sure
Is
someone
it
out there owns the book where that is an image, or people I'm sure know. It's out there. You can look it up. But it's really beautiful artwork, and it's of this scene, I realize now.
is it the Subterranean Press edition, or is it the more recent Broken Binding stuff?
No, I think it is Subterranean Press, because it was
Okay.
before the Broken Binding was a thing. So
Okay.
I remember seeing that like when I was first reading the series, and yeah, having no memory. I was like, this surely must be a later book. Like, I can think of a few scenes in a later book this could theoretically be, but like Deadhouse Gates, no, it's right here. It happens. It's very cool.
Yep. Very cool.
And yet
And-
again, continuing the thematics, right, of like the time before, right, the history, the way it's never really gone. It's just kind of waiting underneath the earth to rise up.
And I like when but a little bit on that subject, maybe slightly tangential, is so Kalam notices this timepiece thing that he thinks Ikariam built there, and then Pearl comes across the same thing, and Lostara asks him what that is, and he says an exercise in futility or something like, or an exercise in measuring futility. And I had to laugh at that because, well, I think Ikariam built that, and somebody comments about how he was probably building all those timepieces so he could, because that's all he could do, because he can't remember anything about his own history.
Yeah.
And and then Pearl straight up says, "Oh, that was futile," and I thought that was a little ironic, yeah. And
Great stuff. This is kind of a weird time to do it. Maybe we should wait until after quotes, or if anyone else has anything. But it just occurred to me we never talked about what chapters we're reading.
for
So I
next
was
week,
flipping through.
yeah,
Yeah.
we should talk about that. But
Whatever feels right.
whatever
It feels
feels
right.
right.
Yeah, and then come back and like we see what happens.
Yeah.
Part of the reason I ask is because the next 2 chapters are only like 50, 60 pages total, but they bring us to the end of this section. So I don't know, like this book, this part, whatever, part 3. So I don't know if we want to stop there on a clean break or continue to the first chapter of the following section, which brings us to like 110, 115 pages.
Yeah, just half of the rest of the book. Is that what you need to read?
No, it's not.
No?
The
One
next one
third?
after that has like a bunch of chapters, actually.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the longest section.
So there's 4 subsections, right? But the last one I think is nearly 1/3 of the book, or maybe more than that.
Yes.
Yeah. We'll talk about it. We'll post it on the episode description what we'll read next. Or like there'll be a new section on pagechewing for what chapters we want to read next. But do you want to do quotes? Like we'll talk about it for a few minutes after we finish recording. But
For sure. Yeah, no, let's sorry for the interjection, people who are just listening to just
I'm
like
sure
have
we
fun,
will-
and
we
here
will
we are
edit this
talking
all
about
out. Don't
like
worry about
the
it.
most mundane bullcrap. Anyway,
I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah, Varsha can cut it all out.
no, she won't. Everybody can suffer through that. It's fine. It was like a minute.
what's the Pearl quote about that you were just saying, Varsha, about the like pursuit of being like a waste of time?
Oh yeah, it's I found it. It's he calls them mechanisms to measure futility.
That's what I feel like this whole video is right now, you know?
Oh my god.
No. I'm sure Varsha will edit it to such a fine perfection that it will seem a very worthwhile discussion.
Like clockwork.
Yeah,
Yes.
she will do that by not touching the video at all and only doing the Riverside export to cut background noise.
As it was meant to be done. They get the real. This is a really human experience. People want parasocial relationships. This is it. You
This
really
is
get a bond with us talking about the things that nobody cares about.
I
and
don't
this
have
is
a parasocial relationship with me, though. So that's the difference.
I was gonna say this will be an exercise in how to wean yourself off of parasocial relationships because this is a group that you never want one.
Exactly. We'll help
Exactly.
people like evolve. This is really crucial work we're doing here.
Oh, the whirlwind seemed to howl with laughter. That seems appropriate.
Good quote. Good quote.
Yeah.
Any other quotes? An
Oh.
assassin is chaos unleashed, students. Kalam's having a little flashback. I didn't remember like getting so much Kalam monologue. But yeah, that was like I guess I haven't wrapped my head around the humanity of all of these soldiers that we met in the first book. Because Fiddler, I think, sort of maybe largely because of his protectiveness of Upsalar, I've grown fond of. Kalam has been sort of just this cold assassin person, and then he has that whole sequence with the children and Apt coming to help him, and just that one scene has sort of changed him for me completely into a different person. So that I think that was a brilliant sequence in more ways than one.
I think it's kind of normal, like the cold-blooded assassin that turns out he's kind of nice.
Warm, cuddly heart.
It's there's a term for it in anime, but I'm not going to say it.
I love his friendship with Quickbend too. I mean, we see it much more in Gardens of the Moon, but like they have a fun repartee. But yeah, I'm with you, Varsha, that this section is definitely what really endeared me to Kalam on my first read through.
Yeah.
There were a lot of good epigraphs here. While we're talking quotes, like the opening to this whole book 3, Chain of Dogs. When the sands danced blind, she emerged from the face of a raging goddess. From a poem called Shaik, written by Bidithal. There's a lot going on there, and a lot that is meaningful, particularly to rereaders. So that's just one I think is interesting. It's also beautiful language. Another one, the epigraph of chapter 11, immediately after that. If you seek the crumbled bones of the Talanai mass, gather into one hand the sands of Uraku. From The Holy Desert, written by Anonymous. So I think it's really easy to like skim over that and not take in what that means. But like the Talanai mass lived on this continent or this subcontinent in a major way. And we kind of see some of the remnants of their civilization, even if we aren't always, it is called as such. And so I think that's an interesting bit of world building that informs everything that happens.
So do we think that the Seven Cities has a lot of older than elder magic, and perhaps the Telanamas had something to do with it, or like their civilization brought some of it about or used it or channeled the magic? That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't quite think that through. But also there were Telanamas in that dead city that Felicin and co go to, right? They were
exactly.
there. Yeah.
They're everywhere, right? I mean, apparently if they lived here in mass, no pun intended, then they're buried here. They're quite literally like a part of the sand. It's
and I love that image too, like a hand holding up sand and then sort of coming up with and gather into one hand the sands of Raraku. Which sorry, go ahead.
Well, all I was going to say was like, I often think of sand, particularly like desert sand, as this kind of golden, thing. But like sand often can be very light and pale, and like could be mistaken for ivory or bone, you know, riven down. And so it literally, like, it's I think clearly kind of in many ways a metaphor, but it also in certain places could be true that you're literally walking on
Yeah.
the bones of Talana Mass. Also because we know
Well,
they
and I
turned
was
it
gonna
like dust
say, Carl, I think
when
that
they, you
city
know, are
they
traveling around.
investigate in
So
chapter 12
it's,
might have actually been a Talon
yeah,
IMAS city, or well, not Talon. I guess it would have been an IMAS city because of this quote. So maybe the
right,
IMAS originated here.
absolutely.
Hmm.
I mean, certainly they had some role in it, and we know there were some sort of immortal custodians, right, who watched over the city, probably ruled it.
Hmm. But they also have that thought about the Imas taking umbrage at their calling themselves the First Empire,
Right.
implying that they're not Imas. But
Well,
it's
do we
possible there
know?
was some
Did humans come
offshoot
from the
born
IMAS? Do
off
we
of
know
them.
that? Like, I don't know.
They were humans, right?
Okay.
I
We
think,
are, yeah, we were told that in Gardens of the Moon.
yeah.
That was one of the things I remember being
Okay. I
shocked
mean, it
that they
makes
straight up
sense,
say in
but
Gardens of the
I didn't know
Moon
if it was spelled out.
that humans are descended from
I mean,
IMAS.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's one of those things
Yeah.
that, like, you really get the archaeologist, anthropologist background of Erikson and Esselmont, that,
yeah.
like, the IMAS are
Well, and then like the Trell. I mean, surely
like
the
they're
Trell came from
cavemen, you
Jaghut,
know,
right? Because of the tusks
and
and everything.
right,
So.
right.
Mhm.
No, I mean, yeah, I think you're right.
Does the Trell also have tusks?
Yep.
Yeah.
Huh. Okay, I didn't realize that. I found the children are dying quote. I will not paraphrase this time. Children are dying. That's a succinct summary of humankind, I'd say. Who needs tomes and volumes of history? Children are dying. The injustices of the world hide in those 3 words. Quote me, Dwicker, and your work's done. And Dwicker thinks the bastard's right. Economics, ethics, the games of the gods, all within that single tragic statement.
Hmm.
And we get a bit of a Dwicker,
Yes.
the
I loved
historian
this part.
origin story. Apparently, Kellenweth
yeah.
pulled him off from the army and said, "You're going
I mean,
to
this
study."
is the kind of thing that makes me want to
Yes.
That was
read
fun,
those
yeah.
Path Through a Sensi books so much, and I'm holding myself
You
back.
didn't
I'm
just
trying
want
to
some,
see if I can hold myself back until we can get there together.
Right? Yeah.
yeah.
Man, I really want to see like those guys, that started the empire.
Yes.
Same.
Same. Mhm.
Absolutely.
I like this insight into Kellenwood, I suppose. The emperor loved lessons in humility, so long as they were never
Perfect.
thrown back at him. And this one that I think will be a recurring theme. What makes a Malazan soldier so dangerous? They're allowed to think.
Mm.
Which I think we're seeing now with the sappers, right? Like
Good point,
off doing
yeah.
their own thing. The captain is never visible, doesn't show up
Yeah.
in any meetings. And Lal tells Dwicker, yeah, Goldin has just accepted that the captain is shy. And Dwicker's like, what do you mean shy? That was a joke. You remember that? Yeah, I love those like little quiet moments of fun that aren't really that just seem so organic and natural. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
yeah, time makes of us believers. Timelessness makes of us unbelievers.
That's
Yeah, there's a
another good
lot
one.
of good stuff in these chapters. Any other quotes?
I think so. I think that was pretty much it for me.
No, I will take that as no. Going once, going twice. Okay. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. We will see you next week. And keep a lookout on the forum if you're there for what chapters we will read next week. But it'll either be the next 2 or the next 3, one of those options. Thank you so much. And bye.